maybe I'll say it this way. This is not necessarily the best way to say it. I'm going to help you to escape this social media trap. And even then, I'm not going to guarantee results. But I can at least say that if you think about what I'm going to tell you, it might help things improve at least a little. So, I don't necessarily relate super commonly to a lot of the, Gen Z issues in terms of like what the reports are of different things, whether it's like the mental health or the loneliness or the whatever different kind of epidemics or things going on. I don't have a perfect life or anything, and not everything is all hunky-dory all the time. All right, so everybody's got their stuff. I got my own hardships or whatever you want to call it, whatever best describes it. Everybody's got their different experiences and situations in life that, we all have a life that we're living, and struggles, and things that we don't like, and things that are good, and things that we wish didn't happen to us or to people that we know, etc. But pertaining to what this modern, technologically advanced society has encountered when it comes to the domination of social media and the smartphone, and how that's affected life and all these things like that. And something I've been seeing lately, at least quite recently, is something to the effect of what one person called social media fatigue. And I just was watching something earlier today where somebody was talking about kind of a similar topic, maybe taken in a little bit of a different way, but the general theme is probably somewhat still present. So this idea of things getting worse when it comes to the social media ecosystem, pick all of the platforms that relate to this, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever. I don't know if people really lump YouTube in with this, because YouTube's kind of a different thing. YouTube's not necessarily social media. To a degree, you can maybe argue it is, or it has elements of it, but it's not necessarily quite in the same way. Just certain features and interfaces and things like that might not be there to the same extent, or whatever. Anyway, so if you are stuck in this kind of social media fatigue or slog, or whatever word best describes this, you could maybe even say meh-ification, like meh, like when people say meh, like how you doing? Meh, like the meh-ification. It's a bad way to say it, doesn't really roll off the tongue, but the mediocrity, the yuck feeling, the yuck in the sense of bed rotting, or whatever other hip terms we've come up with to describe stuff nowadays, whatever you want to say, for if you're just feeling like, right now, this ain't it. This just ain't it. If that's you, I'm going to tell you some stuff on how to maybe improve your life. I can't guarantee it'll fix everything, but anyway, we'll get to it. So, one of the things that may have become apparent to me in different ways lately is these little quality of life things that you might not think about, or maybe you do. But this is the thing, is that on YouTube or social media, like, there's a lot of this hustle culture and grind culture and, all this, whether it's business bro stuff, whether it's red pill stuff, whatever it is. There's a lot of this success mentality stuff out there that basically kind of, it doesn't necessarily always prescribe things like monk mode or, doing other extreme things to try to get financial success in your life, but some of it can be like that sometimes. And part of what I guess I don't like about some of it as a Christian is it's like, I don't think it's legit to stop being friends with somebody just because they're not as success driven as you are, or don't have the same goals as you do in that kind of way, like when it comes to financial and other metrics of success like that. Like, just because you might have friends that are okay with working a blue collar 9 to 5 and you don't want to do that, doesn't necessarily mean you should just stop being their friend. You know what I mean? Like, there's a shallowness to some of this train of thought. And like, you can still understand why these people say it, because if you cut out any influences that may cause you to think in a less successful way, yeah, maybe it inhibits or makes it more difficult for you to succeed when your influences don't really, or when the people around you that are influencing you don't necessarily care about the same things. So there might be on some level merit to the argument, but just because there's some merit, does that mean that that is the best and proper thing to do? You know what I mean? So consider this. Also, these things that are considered quality of life things that make your life better, like when it comes to like spending time with friends, just doing things, good things, you know, like, so let me paint a picture. So in my small hometown, something that's become fairly common recently is me and a couple other friends, it varies in number, will get together at our local pizza shop and just kind of hang out. Recently we've been playing chess at the little coffee table where there's some couches and chairs in this small little pizza shop. And like, we know the owner, we're friends with the owner, friends with his like fiance. So everybody's just kind of getting along. Even the one person who's also working at the pizza shop kind of knows us and gets along with us. So it's all kind of like this little kind of mishmash of different people that are all just kind of hanging out around this business or in this business as he's doing his pizza shop stuff, and we're there talking and whatever. And a lot of us are believers, like Christians, so there might be, Bible conversations or faith conversations that comes up. Lately it's been a lot more of like maybe the relationship conversations and things like that. So it's not always super deep and heavy stuff, but sometimes maybe it is. Sometimes maybe it's serious stuff that spontaneously happens. And maybe sometimes it's just having fun. But like, these little things, if you come at it from like the business bro hustle culture perspective and mindset, these things might be considered to some degree a waste of time by these people. Not necessarily that all of them may think like that, but would it be surprising if they did say that it was a waste of time? These little kind of social outings and little quality of life nice moments, right? And we're playing chess with physical chessboard pieces on a physical chessboard. Now the chessboard is like this little kind of rollout mat. It's pretty cheap in its nature, but it's got maybe some level of charm in its thriftiness, or whatever you want to say. Maybe charm isn't the best word, maybe whatever. Anyway, moving on. So we're playing with a physical chess setup. We're not playing on some tablet. You could do that, but at the same time, maybe there's something that's good about going back to like physical things. A good term for this might be saying analog. So like getting more analog in your life. Maybe that's not the best way to say it, but like going back to things that have like physical texture and functionality that's kind of quaint. Like, is it possible that we've moved away from a lot of the quaint things in life? Whether it's how movies are made, how things feel. Like, there's this one video thumbnail that's stuck in my head from time to time, where I'm reminded of it, where in the YouTube thumbnail, it said nothing hits anymore. And it's pertaining to, I think, like, films and stuff that are made nowadays. And I think it's probably pertaining to mainly Disney films. But maybe you could apply that to, it might apply that universally to just all the kinds of art and content nowadays. And that how nothing hits anymore. Like, and by hits, I think it means like, hits home, like makes an impact on you when you observe the work that you're watching, if it's a movie or whatever. Like, does it actually make impact? Does it stick with you? And it's kind of like this this comparison between art and content. And so much of stuff nowadays is content, even like films and shows. It's all kind of like this content onslaught. And you could loop this back around to social media. And with the one video that I was just watching recently, it's probably not the only video that's talked about this, but the idea that how social media, how it may have started was more about, keeping up with what your friends are doing, versus now it's more kind of like they're recommending you stuff you think you might like, even if it's something that your friends aren't posting. Like, it might be something that's unrelated to anybody on your friends list or anything you follow. It's just like stuff that it recommends because you think that you like it, or you think that you might like it. And maybe sometimes they're correct, but regardless, it's like, does everything kind of feel like this kind of algorithm, Twitter feed, versus like a collection of your friends' posts? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it used to be that what would show up in like your Facebook feed would be just your friends' posts and stuff like that, and the groups or things or pages that you follow, that you like curate for yourself? Is that fair to say? And is it fair to say that it's probably less like that now? And so all this to say, like, how much of it is just like content and, audience retention, keeping people on the platform, kind of maybe the maximalization of the gamification, or maybe that's not the best way to say it, but these platforms just wanting to, keep you on, more revenue for, to get more people to stay on longer, watch more ads, the make more revenue or whatever income as a social media business. And like, I'm quite pro-capitalism, so don't think that this is going to turn into some kind of communist progressive rant or anything like that, because that's not what this is. Now, at the same time, I'm also, I don't believe a fan of corporatism either, which I might not even have the definition 100% in my mind, but essentially the idea that like this corporatism, if I'm understanding it correctly, of like companies kind of being in bed with government or controlling things, almost like a pseudo government figure or something like that, like where maybe a better word is technocracy, where like the big tech companies are in control and kind of influence and decide how things go. And you could debate how much of these different things are true, but regardless, I'm probably rambling a bit now. But getting back to the essential things here, like, so with how everything has kind of become this content machine, and with how things are going, and if you feel stuck in this machine, and if you don't like it and you want to get out, maybe trying some things like I was talking about earlier might help. Because again, I can't guarantee that I'm going to help you like fix everything in your life, and at the end of the day, no human could fix everything wrong with you. Nothing but the Lord can truly fix you, right? So full stop right there, okay? But even if you're not willing to hear the biblical side of it, at least hopefully hear something. It'd be great if you only heard the biblical side of this, then that would be probably the biggest win that I could get in this video. So essentially, like, other things that could also be food for thought is like when I gave the example of going into the local pizza shop with friends and playing chess on like a physical chess board that my friend has had since like the 70s or whatever, and the white chess pieces have like little orange grime in the cracks or grooves or whatever because it's so old, and this little placemat chessboard that he rolls out, it might have some scratches or stains or whatever on it. Like, there's some character there. It's a physical thing, and we're in the pizza shop talking, playing chess, doing stuff. He's got a little chess timer on his phone, so it kind of makes you more willing to take risks and, maybe try stuff. At least maybe that might be how I look at it, because the game can only last like a max time of an hour. And, you verse different people, you talk about stuff, we eat food or cheesecake or get something to drink at the pizza shop. We have a good time, and we're there for like hours. It's easy to just spend the whole night just being, or the whole evening into the, till like 12 a.m. or whatever, just being there. And this is the kind of experience. So this is maybe what people define as a third space, which, as far as I understand, it feels like third spaces are becoming less common, and you could probably find people on YouTube that talk about this. But if you can find some way to make friends and get back into doing quality of life things again that maybe has become less common as third spaces may have disappeared more and more, and as people may become more separated and segmented or isolated from other people in regular everyday interactions. As this has become maybe more commonly what's been happening with people in modern society, and we maybe interact more on these digital separated ways than face-to-face and in person. A simple thing that you could do to fight back against whatever you want to call this modern state of affairs is try to make friends, good friends, that, with people that it's like a good experience with and a good influence for you, and try to just do good things together. Spend some good quality time talking about things. It doesn't necessarily have to be deep or meaningful all the time, but just having good fun, doing good stuff. Like, emphasize the good here, because there's probably plenty of bad out there. So emphasize the good. Whether it's playing chess, whether it's talking about stuff, whether it's having a campfire at your friend's house, because here we're in like a small town, so a lot of people probably do more of the campfire thing, where you just get some logs, throw it in this, tire rim or whatever, and light it on fire and just sit around the fire talking or whatever, having a beverage, like stuff like that. It might be harder to do that if you're like, in an apartment complex in the city, but like figure out kind of a thing that you could do, whether it's a potluck, just something to interact with other people in a good way, doing something that is good and meaningful in life. Okay? I'll turn on this light here. Is that seriously not gonna... 1 second. There we go. Okay. So now my camera, everything seems quite red, but roll with me. Okay. So, doing all this stuff, right? The quality of life things. So, what are practical ways you could reincorporate these things into your life? Like just little things. And it might suck at first because maybe it's hard for you to make friends, but in that case, like maybe trying to go to local events that you have an interest in and that you could find people that have similar interest. If I'm going to give you advice on, what's a great way to hopefully meet some decent people and hopefully build some good friendships, like find a good church, and if you're not a Christian or open to the Christianity and the Bible and God and things like that, then you might tune me out right now. And if you do, that's your choice. But at the end of the day, like, at least consider trying to find a good Bible-believing church and just attending there, listening, making some friends, spending some quality time with people. And try, also, this is another thing, try to not ruin things with your family. Like, life is short, and so some stuff just might not be worth it. You know what I mean? Like, just, if you have gotten in fights and spats and whatever with your family members over the last however many years, and maybe people aren't talking anymore, like, ask yourself if it's worth it. Because in some cases, maybe there's certain situations that I don't know about that maybe, it's worth cutting people off or whatever. But maybe in some cases, it wasn't necessary. Maybe they messed up. Maybe you messed up. Maybe both sides messed up. Is there any way that you guys can forgive each other and move forward? Is there any way that things can be good again? That people can walk in love towards each other? I don't know your situation, so I could maybe be not understanding all of the levels of what's going on. Maybe there's some situations where distance is more required. But if there's a way where you can make amends and forgive each other, like, because how I look at forgiveness, as a Christian, is I don't think that forgiveness is an option. Like, I think it might be a must. Now, I could be wrong theologically about that, but it's like in the one parable about forgiveness, where it was like the one. Please look this up yourself. Don't take my word for it. But there's this parable in the Bible about a servant that owed somebody a debt, and I think it goes something like this. They threw him in prison because he couldn't pay his debt, or he was going to get thrown in prison because he couldn't pay his debt, but then somebody else paid the debt or forgave the debt for him, so then he got released from that penalty, and then this servant that just got this debt forgiven or paid for or whatever happened immediately went to another servant that owed him a debt and like grabbed him by the collar or whatever the parable says that he did and said, "Pay me what you owe me." And then I think upon the judge or whoever it was hearing about this, they threw this guy in prison that had the debt paid for, like the guy that got out and his debt got paid for or forgiven or whatever. They took that same guy and I think threw him back in prison until his debt could be paid. So it was kind of like this dude like got his debt forgiven and then went right to doing kind of the same thing to somebody else that he just got forgiven for having, which was like a debt, right? And so I might be not describing this parable well, so please look up this in the Bible for yourself to make sure that the details are right in your mind. But like, I think after this parable, it talks about how if you don't forgive, you won't be forgiven. So again, please look this up. I even want to look this up right now because it's like stuff like that matters if that is indeed the proper context. So if you do not forgive, then you won't be forgiven. So if that is indeed accurate, I'm just looking it up right now. Okay, so I'm pretty sure if I'm looking this up correctly, the parable is from Matthew 18, verse 21, and so this is the parable of the unforgiving servant. Then Peter came to him and said, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times. Jesus said to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. So Peter was asking up to 7 times, like, is that how much I forgive him? And then Jesus said to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and that payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, 'Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all.' Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him the debt. But the servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, 'Pay me what you owe.' So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you all.' And he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what had been done, they were very grieved, and came and told their master all that had been done. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, 'You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you?' And his master was angry and delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due to him. So my heavenly Father also will do to you. If each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses." That's pretty heavy stuff. Now, in terms of the context here, when it says forgive his brother his trespasses, I'm not sure about what the context of brother necessarily means here, so feel free to ask somebody that knows more than I do about this sort of thing, okay? But regardless, least to say, but one thing we could say, or that seems obvious, forgiveness is important. It matters, right? Regardless of whether Like, I'm not a theological expert or anything, but based on reading that, is it fair to say that forgiveness is important? So, if there is any way, through God, forgive your family, forgive other people. There's people that I need to, there's at least however many people that I need to work on forgiving in my life, at least one. You know what I mean? And so it can be tough. It's not that it's easy to forgive, but one of the other things that I would recommend to you is forgiving people that have wronged you. And if you can make amends, great. You know? Is that fair to say? And so that might be one of the steps in making your life better. But at the end of the day, only God can truly fix our lives. Just what I'm giving is just some other, practical advice, but it pales in comparison to the spiritual, right? So, but if you won't take the spiritual advice, then maybe you'll at least listen to some of the other things I'm saying. But at the end of the day, the spiritual stuff is the most important stuff. So, trying to forgive people, spending quality time with good people or with, good friends, at third spaces and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be a third space, but if it is, that could be cool. Just because there's been some cool times at the pizza shop. But even if it's at like one of your friends' houses or backyards or whatever, just like getting together with people in physical proximity to one another, talking or eating or sharing beverages, discussing things, playing games, whatever it is. Even if it's like, playing couch co-op Halo, like back in the day. Like, whatever, good stuff, that you guys can do together. Because these are the things that might not be seen as directly productive to the success of your career. But is it possible that it might be productive towards the success of your life? Success of your life in the sense of the quality of life that you're living, And like, don't idolize any created thing, right? Don't idolize people. Don't do that. Just like, what are the things that we're doing, and are they improving our quality of life? And so other tips to help in this journey of trying to like improve your life and get away from this social media prison, trap, whatever you want to call it. Consider turning off notifications for everything but DMs, like direct messages and phone calls and stuff. So and sometimes maybe the apps will try to re-turn on notifications, because I turned off notifications from Snapchat, I'm pretty sure, but somehow they got re-enabled, so I need to probably turn that off again. Consider turning off notifications for all these different social media recommendation things. The only thing that I probably won't turn off notifications for is YouTube. YouTube might still be worth turning notifications off for, because you could maybe get sucked into the algorithm infinite scroll or watching or whatever. But YouTube is probably a little bit less dangerous than the social media stuff, because YouTube is maybe a bit more separated into its more specific sort of way of consuming content, in the sense that YouTube's probably more typically long form video, so it maybe doesn't contribute to the same level of brain rotting as stuff like TikTok might. You know what I mean? Like, you might find like a really good piece of content on YouTube that's like 40 minutes long that might really help you in life, and so maybe YouTube notifications are worth leaving on, but you could decide that for yourself. And then just keep direct messages open, and your calls and stuff like that open for notifications, just so if people like need to get a hold of you, like one-on-one interactions, like say your mom is calling you or your brother or whatever, then they can get a hold of you still, so you don't completely ghost away from everything, or whatever the best way to say that is. So consider doing that, just to kind of maybe lessen the likelihood that you'll get sucked into this doom scrolling. Now, to credit, to be fair, credit to whoever might have inspired that recommendation or thought in my mind. I think I considered doing the whole notification thing before I saw this on a YouTube video, but I probably saw it also in some way on a YouTube video. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, a lot of ideas, some good, some not. And there's a lot of noise, and the other thing is like the fear of missing out, the FOMO, as it might be called. Something that was just in a video earlier today that I was listening to, or whatever, was talking about how like if like the guy talked about social media detox and how when he did it back in 2019, long story short, it's like back then with the way that the social media was working, it's like you might be afraid of missing out on what your friends are doing or whatever, whereas nowadays it's not necessarily as bad because of how social media works. It's more likely that you'll miss out on like just a flash in the pan trend or some other thing that's not necessarily related to like your friend circle. It's more just like general internet ecosystem stuff, which maybe to some degree you're still concerned about missing out on, but maybe it's like less personal now than it used to be. Like he said it in probably a different way, but hopefully I'm doing some justice to what he's talking about. So yeah, consider turning off the notifications. And then after that, like maybe like how many hours of sleep are you getting a night? There's many nights where I could probably get some more hours of sleep. If you just want to feel better, maybe a way to feel better is just sleep a little bit more. Now at the same time, if you're already sleeping like 9 hours, then maybe the sleep part is not the answer. Maybe you already are pretty good in that department. But if you need to get some more sleep to be a bit more healthy, consider doing that. Like, what are you eating? Are you eating like real food or is it all crap? Because, you might have heard the term garbage in, garbage out. That's something that I heard from a friend of mine probably several times, at least twice. But anyway, consider what you're eating. Like, this is like some basic stuff, but maybe the answer isn't all that complicated. Maybe that's why some of the advice is so basic. It's like, maybe it's not that hard to make your life better. Maybe you just have to do some simple things consistently. And maybe that's even like me teaching myself right now or whatever, because sometimes maybe it is that simple. But anyway, so is there anything else I should add? Oh yeah, I saw this video on Twitter a while ago, and it was something to the effect of like how to solve any problem. And it was like, I don't know if it was saying how to solve any problem in an hour or less or whatever it was, but it was this very brief, like 2.5 minute clip or whatever of this dude in possibly a suit or whatever. And he had like a whiteboard beside him or a chalkboard or whatever. And he was talking about this concept, or he was talking about this thing. He called it go into the silence. Now that might sound creepy, but what essentially I think it all means, or at least what he was talking about, is that you simply just, when you have a problem or a creative block or whatever, you basically just like go and sit quietly for a prolonged period of time. And if this sounds difficult, maybe that shows how busy we've allowed ourselves to become in our brains and our minds and everything, where we're just so consumed or busy with the noise and always noise all the time and doing things, and there's not necessarily a lot of quiet moments. And it's funny because I don't know if I started doing this at work before I even saw this video, but it's something that may have kind of stuck with me, and I think I might have even heard it in another YouTube video. But essentially, like, I started, like, I'm a delivery driver, and so when I'm driving from from my town to the next town over, there have been times where for like a portion of my drive, I'll just like sit quietly, like no radio, no music or anything like that, because I'll usually try to like start at some point earlier in the drive with praying. Now my mind wanders, so I'm not necessarily praying all the time or anything, but it'll kind of start with that, maybe to some degree at some point earlier on in the journey of the trip, with like prayer. And then maybe I'll be thinking about stuff or whatever. Like, it's not all like good or productive, you know what I mean? But it's like just sitting in the silence, like just sitting quietly. And like, I think at some point I might have noticed that like some creative ideas would come to mind just when you're sitting quietly and there's not noise or other things consuming, your thoughts or your headspace or whatever. And another thing that might be worth noting is how you might need to be vigilant with protecting your headspace, because how easy is it to just start feeling like really pessimistic if you watch a few pessimistic videos on YouTube or social media or whatever, or read something pessimistic, and like, is it possible that could contribute to your day becoming more depressing because you just kind of fed your brain maybe some of the wrong kind of stuff right now. And so maybe sometimes pulling away from certain content or from certain social media platforms or whatever, or pulling it back from technology, maybe part of that is good, because if it helps to protect your headspace, if that's something you need to be doing in certain ways, maybe that's like a good step, is just like pulling back from that, protecting your headspace, trying to get in a better frame of mind. If that's what you need to be doing right now, probably a good idea to try to get in a better frame of mind, because stuff can be pretty messed up in the world, and stuff can be pretty depressing. Now, at the same time, maybe it's worth still being informed with like what's going on, because you probably shouldn't just be like ignorant, to everything. Is this light going to turn off? Okay, it's still on. Okay, good. Maybe it's worth still being like informed to what's going on and stuff, but maybe there's limits to what's healthy, because if it consumes you, I might have gotten a little bit like that during like the COVID times, where it's like you might do all this watching and researching of different stuff that's going on in the world, different current events and news stories or conspiracy, whatever you want to talk about, like the different stuff. And there's might be a lot of truth to a lot of the different things that you're researching about or listening to or whatever, or, hearing people talk about. But like, is it possible that there's like a healthy limit in terms of the quality of life? And at the end of the day, God is sovereign, and, the Lord's will be done. And so, like, we should have peace, like if you're a believer, you know what I mean? Like, we should have peace in the fact that God is sovereign, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't pay attention to anything, but maybe just that there's a proper way to do it, and proper amount and levels and, balance and things like that. And I'm no expert, you know what I mean? Currently right now, I'm a delivery driver. Anyway, so what are other ways you can improve your life? Beyond what I've already said, so again, like maybe consider getting some alone time where you could just think. Also, like, are you on any substances? You smoking weed? You doing drugs? You drinking? How do you feel about that? Is that making your life better or worse? Because it's one of those things where it's like, if you're constantly numbing out or trying to escape your life, escape reality, why? I mean, the answer is kind of obvious, potentially, because if you're trying to escape your life, maybe it's because you think that your life sucks. And it's like, it's easier said than done, but instead of trying to escape your life all the time, is there any way that you can make your life suck less? Again, easier said than done. That might sound kind of dismissive or offensive, but it's like, can we for a moment maybe be a little bit practical in the sense of, is this your current state of life? Is that all there is for you? Or is it possible for things to get better and for things to improve? Like, think about that. Because if it's possible for things to get better to the point where you don't feel the need to numb out all the time on substances, then shouldn't you try to pursue avenues to make your life legitimately better, and then at the same time getting off these substances that are causing you to numb out and making you want to, or the avenue that you're using to escape your life? Like, I'm going to recommend that you try to fix, or not fix is not the right word, try to improve your life rather than escape it all the time. Because at the end of the day, what happens when you come down off that high, when you sober up for a moment in your hangover state, or in whatever state, maybe it's a hangover, maybe it's something else, whatever. Eventually that high is going to pass. Then what? Is it just a series of extreme highs and extreme lows, or, where you're like just looking for your next fix to escape reality? Is that all it is? Like, you're just like getting high and then being depressed at work, and then getting high again after work, and then repeating this cycle and not necessarily getting anywhere. Is like, does that sound like a good life? And maybe this is more of the tough love part of the video, but it's like, maybe we need to get serious on this, and life is short, and consider that your soul hangs in the balance. You know what I mean? Like if you are not saved by the Lord Jesus Christ, your soul is hanging in the balance. This is the most serious thing ever. This is spiritual life and death we're talking about here. Like, your eternity is on the line. Are you, like, comfortable with that? You know, like, this is probably the most real part of the video, because this is, like, the difference between, like, you know, eternal damnation and eternal life. You know, like, this is, like, the biggest thing of all of our lives here, right? And, like, your soul hanging in the balance is a big deal, right? Like, where are you going when you die? Do you even know? Do you care? Do you believe that there even is anything after this? Like, get real. Get really real with yourself, with God, with the people around you, maybe. You know what I mean? Because maybe you should get really real with the people around you as well, right? And are the people around you real? You know? Like, are they getting real? And, like, stuff might be kind of wild out there in the world right now. And so, maybe the best time to get real is right now. You know? Is that fair? So, yeah. Have I said something that's, you know, made some impact here? Hopefully. I'm not going to try to sell you anything in this video. I'm not going to, you know, do anything like that. I'm not going to ask you to do any additional things other than what I've talked about in this video. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this stuff or something in this video helps. And so that's what this video is going to be for, is helping somebody, whether it's you, whether it's somebody else. So thank you if you've listened this far. Thank you for listening this far. And yeah, I'm going to leave it on the most important note, which is repent and believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, because that's the most important thing. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.